My rival lost his memory and decided I was his wife. He kept pestering me to do it, but I just pushed him away. Nope, you can't. He said he wanted to try again. I held up one finger. Not gonna happen. 1 minute, remember? After that, my rival started trying every remedy under the sun. The night his memory returned, the man's skin was hot, his voice husky. Honey, wanna see if I can now? I heard my arch-nemesis, Larry, had amnesia. I immediately bought a couple of strings of firecrackers and rushed to the hospital, ready to celebrate. But I didn't expect to be tackled into a hug the moment I stepped into his room. The guy who usually looked at me like I was something he scraped off his shoe was now nuzzling my shoulder, whimpering. Honey, what took you so long? He took the firecrackers from my hand and set them aside. And you brought me a present. Thanks, honey. What an idiot. Who gives firecrackers as a gift? I couldn't resist ruffling his fluffy hair a couple of times. It was surprisingly soft. Inside, though, I was laughing my head off at Larry. He must have been desperate for a wife, losing his memory and still managing to find himself one. I opened my phone camera, pointed it at his face, and gave his chin a little scratch. What did you just call me? Say it again. Honey. As if encouraged, Larry snuggled closer, his voice even taking on a cutesy tone. I was bent over laughing, patting Larry's head like a drum. Just then, the door to the hospital room opened. The doctor walked in, his eyes sharp as he looked at my hand resting on the patient's head. I quickly pulled my hand off Larry's noggin and stood up straight. How is he? The doctor didn't say anything, just smiled at me. Just as my scalp was starting to tingle and I was about to make a run for it, he finally spoke, his voice gentle. He can eat, drink, argue, and throw a punch. Aside from the blood clot in his brain and temporary amnesia, there's nothing else wrong. This is a critical period for memory recovery. I suggest you don't go against his wishes. Otherwise, if his memory gets jumbled, you'll be taking care of him for the rest of your life. After explaining the precautions, the doctor tossed a bag in front of me. He can be discharged. Go on, take him home. I tilted my head and pointed at myself, giving him a "You sure about this?" look. Larry squeezed his head in next to mine, rubbing against me. Honey, hurry up, let's go home. I still ended up taking him back to my place. What could I do? His parents were gone, he had no other family, and he had a terrible temper. I was afraid he'd get beaten up on the street. We stopped by the supermarket to get Larry some necessities. The whole way, he trailed behind me like a timid little bride. His eyes sparkled when he looked at me, very obedient, and occasionally he'd let out a syrupy honey. He almost reminded me of his younger self. After we got everything, I pushed the cart towards the checkout, but my little bride stopped me. Larry's handsome face was flushed, his eyes darting around. He looked like he wanted to say something but was too embarrassed, the spineless wonder. My hand moved faster than my brain, and I instinctively smacked him. Spit it out. Larry didn't even flinch from the hit. He just reached out, grabbed something, and tossed it in the cart. A small pink box landed among our things. I picked it up. Printed on it were the words rubber. Ultra thin, strawberry flavor. The moment I realized what it was, my face turned beet red. I quickly shoved it back where it came from and dragged Larry away from that aisle. But he wouldn't let it go. Honey, why'd you put it back? Damn it, calling me honey and taking liberties was one thing, but did he really have to think about it? I silently chanted he's a patient 10 times before I managed to stop myself from fighting him right there in the supermarket. Larry, however, wasn't done with me. When he saw I was ignoring him, he started poking my shoulder. Do we still have some at home? We could get another box just in case. I'm afraid tonight won't be enough. After all, I'd been holding back for days. My face darkened, and I slapped his hand away, hissing through gritted teeth. We don't need them. Larry's eyes lit up, as if he'd had a sudden realization. His next words were a critical hit. Really? Oh, so you prefer it raw. MMH. Luckily, I was quick enough to clap my hand over his mouth, saving us from public humiliation. No. It's because you can't perform. His bright, puppy dog eyes dimmed. Larry looked at me in disbelief, then down at his pants. I knew, in that moment, his world had crumbled. My apartment isn't big, so I had to clear out the study to make a makeshift room for Larry. He watched me bustling about, his eyes clear and clueless. Why are you cleaning the study? Is a friend coming over? No, it's for you. I don't need it, honey. Aren't we sleeping together? The questions were giving me a headache. I covered his mouth again. You asked for separate rooms. Because you can't perform, you have low self-esteem. No more questions. His almond-shaped eyes widened slightly. After a long pause, he nodded dumbly. He was much more subdued after that and didn't bother me again until bedtime, even after his shower. After such a chaotic day, I found I wasn't sleepy when I finally lay down. I stared up at the ceiling, suddenly remembering the days before Larry and I had our falling out. We were childhood sweethearts, sharing every moment before we turned 18. We were best friends, and inseparable lovers. At our most intimate, we'd sneak kisses in empty classrooms. Larry would grin, bold and carefree, saying he'd marry me one day. Unfortunately, I never got to see him marry me. Instead, I heard from others that he'd gone abroad. It was an abrupt breakup. He blocked me on everything. When Larry came back, we were enemies. Especially since the once bright and carefree pretty boy had turned into a cynical, bitter jerk. It made him even more detestable. If he hadn't lost his memory, I doubt we'd ever have ended up under the same roof again. I don't know when I fell asleep. In my days, I just felt the blanket getting heavier and my body getting hotter. I opened my eyes to Larry's handsome face, way too close. 2 in the morning, and someone had decided to climb into my bed and hug me like a vice. Seeing me awake, Larry got even more excited, nuzzling his head against my neck and shoulder. Honey. I think I can do it again. Let me try. In that instant, I genuinely felt like I could kill him. I held up one finger, pushing his head a little further away. Then I waved that finger in front of his eyes. Not happening. You only last a minute. Larry stared at my finger for nearly 5 minutes, without blinking. I waved my hand in front of his face. Hello? Earth to Larry. The next second, I felt a wet, warm sensation on my cheek. Drip after drip, it was strangely like being in a rainforest. The corners of Larry's eyes were red, his dark pupils swimming with moisture. This big guy, nearly 6'3", hung his head and just sobbed, big fat tears rolling down. No amount of consoling would make him leave. I almost felt embarrassed for the Larry who would eventually get his memory back. Finally, I managed to coax him with a couple of warm kisses on his cheeks, and he went back to his room. I watched his retreating figure and then silently locked my door. Big mistake. On Larry's 5th day at my place, I was once again woken up by that strong, bitter medicinal smell. I went out, and sure enough, the man was squatting by my bedroom door, cradling his big bowl, savoring it sip by sip. I opened the door and walked out, used to it by now. Larry followed me like a shadow, still holding the bowl of dark, potent, and extremely fragrant Chinese herbal medicine. Ever since that night he'd been thoroughly crushed. He disappeared early the next morning. He didn't come back until noon, carrying several large bags of medicinal herbs that looked quite alarming. The crucial part was Larry whispering to me conspiratorially. Honey, these are all tonics. Everyone online says that old traditional doctor is amazing. Don't worry, I'll definitely make you happy in bed. He earned a few slaps for that remark, but from that day on, he started his ritual of squatting by my door every morning. As if he was afraid I wouldn't see him drinking his medicine. Day by day, there was no sign of Larry's memory returning, but he was becoming increasingly domesticated. Once I was sure he was physically okay, I went back to work. At home, Larry took care of all my meals and chores, and recently he even started learning to bake desserts. I have to say, he looked pretty cute in my little pink puppy apron. However, for the past 2 days, I haven't tasted any of his desserts. We had a fight. More accurately, Larry was giving me the silent treatment. It was because I had a work dinner that ran late. My boss, knowing I lived alone and far away, had the company in turn drive me home. Considering Larry was at home, I specifically asked to be dropped off at the entrance of our apartment complex. But I didn't expect Larry, who had clearly been waiting for a while, to catch me the moment I stepped out of my colleague's car. Larry, tall and long-legged, looked genuinely terrifying as he strode over, his face cold and furious. The poor intern got scared and hid behind me. That move made Larry's face even darker. He looked exactly like a man who had just caught his wife cheating, a dark, twisted expression on his face. He grabbed me and pulled me into his arms. The night air was cool, but Larry's embrace under his jacket was warm and carried a faint oolong tea scent. I couldn't help asking, "Did you use my perfume again?" From above my head came his voice, tight with anger. "What's wrong with using a little perfume? You're out here cheating on me, and I haven't even said anything." With a throbbing headache, I was dragged home by him, not even getting a chance to say goodbye to my colleague. As soon as we got inside, Larry took my coat and bag and hung them up. Then he leaned on my shoulder and started crying, perfectly timing it for the moment I was about to lose my temper. He had cleaned the entire apartment spotless. My comforter was piled on the sofa. He must have aired it out today. Right then, with his tears warming my neck, I felt a rare pang of sympathy. I ruffled his hair a couple of times and tried to soften my voice to soothe him. "We're just colleagues." Larry lifted his head from my shoulder. His ridiculously long eyelashes were clumped together with moisture, and his handsome face was flushed from being buried in my neck. He looked at me with those wet eyes. My heart pounded in my chest. I was so mesmerized I forgot what I was going to say next. Fat tears rolled down his cheeks. Larry sobbed, "You never call me hubby, and you don't let me touch you. I even had morning wood today. I'm clearly fine, but you keep lying to me." He listed my crimes one by one, finally concluding, "You don't love me at all." As for Larry's method of silent treatment, it involved cooking, putting the food on the table, then turning around and locking himself in the study, refusing to communicate. When I'd eaten and left for work, I'd see on the security camera that he'd throw his untouched portion of food straight into the trash. His main goal, self-punishment. Wasting food is shameful. He deserved to be punished. I put the bags of snacks I was holding on the table, mustered the sweetest voice I could manage in my entire life, and knocked on his door. "Larry, sweetie, can you open the door?" No response. "Larry? Baby?" A barely audible cough came from inside the room. I couldn't help but smile and continued in my exaggeratedly sweet tone. "Hubby." The door flew open and shut, and I was pulled into his arms. Larry's face was stern, but because he was facing the light, I could see the tips of his ears were bright red. I reached up to pinch one, but he awkwardly pushed my hand away. We were too close, our hot breaths mingling, the air thick with what felt like pink love particles. My hand rose and fell with a slap. "You dare give me the silent treatment again?" Another slap. "You dare go on a hunger strike again?" I twisted Larry's ear and dragged him to the pile of snacks. "Eat." But he didn't appreciate my gesture, muttering with a frown, "I don't want to eat this stuff. I came home late from work, went out of my way to pick these things out, and lugged all these bags upstairs. And he says he doesn't want them." The anger that had been simmering inside me immediately boiled over. I opened my mouth to let him have it. "You." His mouth covered mine. I heard him mumble, "I want to eat honey." I admit, the atmosphere tonight was a bit suggestive. The time was right, the place was right, but alas, the people weren't. I pushed him away, my fingertip tapping his temple. "Wait until your head is better, then we'll talk." Larry's lower lip jutted out, and he looked like he was about to cry again. I quickly stopped him. "No crying." Who knew that my super cool, badass rival would turn into such a crybaby after losing his memory? It was a strangely adorable contrast. I kneaded his face like dough. But I couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Larry would eventually go back to normal. How long would that take? Half a month? A month? Each passing day felt like a knife hanging over my neck, ready to fall at any moment. Most importantly, my relationship with Larry was veering dangerously off course. For instance, I was getting more and more used to having him around. I liked hearing him call me in that clingy way. I even liked his tears. So, when the day came for Larry's memory to return, would I be able to leave him? With things weighing on my mind, my appetite had been poor for the past few days. Larry was frantic, bustling about, trying out all sorts of new recipes, completely forgetting about our Cold War. When the weekend finally arrived, Larry scratched at my bedroom door early in the morning, pestering me to go out with him to clear my head. Yes, scratched. I had firmly decided to be a couch potato for the day and had already refused his first suggestion. Then he started scratching at the door, whining. Honey, baby, darling. Please come out with me just once. Don't you want to go on a date with me? Do you not love me? So clingy and annoying. I followed him out grumpily, remembering his morning antics, and couldn't help blushing. Just then, Larry sidled up to me, staring at my face as if he'd discovered a new continent. Honey, your face is so red. I looked up and met the gazes of several passersby. Damn this amusement park, why were there so many people? Damn Larry, of all places, why did he have to pick here? I dragged him through the crowd to a less crowded corner and impatiently smacked his back a couple of times. It's all your fault for picking this stupid place. Are you a kid? Still coming to an amusement park? Larry's face crumpled, but he didn't argue. Instead, a small, childish voice piped up from the side. Miss, my teacher said hitting is not allowed. Larry and I both looked over. It was a little girl who looked to be only 5 or 6 years old. She was wearing a pale yellow dress and had 2 pigtails, her face fair and chubby. Before I could even process, my hand had already reached out to pinch her cheek. It was so soft and smooth. I was overcome with cuteness and spoke to her in a high-pitched, cutesy voice. Little girl, what are you doing here all by yourself? The child's eyes widened. She took a step back, her face full of caution. You're weird. Larry looked at me, then at the little girl, and squatted down, trying hard to suppress a laugh as he beckoned to her. Come here. The little girl toddled back, her eyes shining. You're so handsome, mister. Hey, talk about a double standard. I watched them talk, green with envy. Larry, for once, seemed somewhat more composed, his expression gentle, a faint smile on his lips. The backdrop was a giant, colorful Ferris wheel. I just thought, this man is so handsome, his voice is so nice. What were his pretty lips murmuring? I wanted to kiss them. When I snapped back to reality, Larry had already lifted the little girl up in front of me and given her a little jiggle. Her chubby cheeks wobbled like water. I instinctively reached out to pinch them again, but only ended up pinching Larry's face. The old rascal, using a child as a shield, cheekily leaned in. Honey, if you keep liking her this much, I'm going to get jealous. The little girl was lost. Larry and I walked around for ages before we finally took her to the park's announcement booth and handed her over to her parents. After rushing around for half the day, neither of us felt like playing anymore, so we just started a slow, leisurely walk. It was the weekend, so the amusement park was mostly filled with families out for fun, and young couples holding hands, taking pictures. Only Larry and I walked with a person's distance between us, unhurriedly. I snuck a sideways glance at him. I didn't know what he was daydreaming about, but just when he should have been clingy, he wasn't. It wasn't until Larry almost bumped into someone that I reached out, pulled him back, and finally found a reason to scold him. What on earth are you thinking about? A child. Remembering how reluctant he looked when we said goodbye to the little girl, I had a sudden realization. I ruffled his hair and said comfortingly. Don't even think about it. Kidnapping is illegal. No, Larry grabbed my hand. The warmth of his skin against the back of my hand made my heart skip a beat. I mean our child. What? Larry gripped my hand tightly, his palm a little sweaty. His eyes were full of hope as he stammered. Honey, let's have a baby too. I had no idea how his train of thought had jumped to this. Before I could even open my mouth. He seemed to anticipate what I was going to say and explained, his face flushing red. I know but I've been working really hard on getting better. It was already evening when we got back. Even as we reached the bottom of our apartment building, Larry still looked dejected and wronged. All because I had stopped him from continuing the baby discussion in public. I ignored him and started walking upstairs by myself. I'd only taken 2 steps when I heard Larry's voice, heavy with tears. Honey, wait for me. It turns out, smart people are still resourceful even with amnesia. I had figured out early on that sometimes Larry cried simply because he thought it was a way to get to me, not because he was actually that sad or upset. Clearly, he was right. I stopped and turned to take his hand, but instead, he wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me into his embrace. The palm pressed against my waist was too hot. When our eyes met, our breaths mingled because we were so close. After a moment, Larry covered my eyes with his other hand. Honey, I want to have a child with you. It wasn't his usual playful, coaxing tone. Instead, it was calm and deep. Larry was serious. My vision was obscured, everything dark. I couldn't see Larry's expression, and even his emotions were hidden in that unusually pitched voice. I didn't know why he was suddenly so fixated on having a child, but I couldn't. I could only say lamely, wait until your head is better. Silence again. With my eyes covered, I could only hear the faint rustling of the night wind. Larry finally moved. The hand covering my eyes slowly shifted, the movement very slow. So slow that when I opened my eyes, I first saw his trembling hand, not the face hidden behind it. My heart clenched violently, and an unprecedented wave of panic washed over me. I didn't know what he was planning to do, but I reached out and grasped his palm. My voice was hoarse when I spoke again. Whatever it is, let's talk about it when we get back. I remember everything. Our hands were still clasped. Larry's voice was cool, calm, not belonging to the amnesiac him. As if afraid I hadn't heard clearly, he repeated. I remember everything, Cherry. They say the year my mom was pregnant with me, she suddenly developed a craving for cherries. So, this nickname stuck with me before I was even born. Larry's family lived right across the hall. His parents were business people, busy day in and day out, so he often came over to my place. When I was little, the thing I looked forward to most was Larry walking into my house, shouting, Cherry, come get some snacks. All sorts of imported snacks, air-freighted fruits, and rare, unusual treats made me think he was some kind of snack god. At school, when everyone else called me by my proper name, only Larry called me Cherry. He rode his bike to take me to and from school, helped me organize my desk and pack my school bag, and always piled any tasty or fun things in front of me first. Both our parents would tease him, saying he was raising me to be his wife since he was little. However, later on, Larry's parents' business ran into trouble. They were traveling around trying to sort things out when their plane crashed. Both of Larry's parents passed away, and all their outstanding debts fell on him. I was heartbroken. That day, I hugged him and cried until my eyes were swollen shut, and I vaguely remember being comforted to sleep. When I woke up, Larry's family was gone, their apartment empty. All my calls to Larry went unanswered. After pestering my parents for days, I finally found out he had gone abroad. As for where exactly, nobody knew. By the time Larry came back, a whole 6 years had passed, a complete blank. And from that day on, we became arch-enemies. I hated him for leaving without a word, and even more, I hated how he kept silent about those past few years, refusing to tell me a single thing. So even though Larry was back in the country, we didn't actually see each other often. And when we did, I was always ready to give him a piece of my mind, or a few slaps. Those missing years were always an invisible, insurmountable chasm, keeping Larry and me firmly on opposite sides. So you're saying, you got played by the same guy twice, and you still can't let him go? I was wondering why I hadn't seen you around lately. Turns out you were shacked up with your pretty boy. With guts like that, you'll succeed at anything. The music in the bar was deafening. My friend, Jessie, whom I'd practically forgotten for nearly a month thanks to my new beau, was now twisting my ear and shouting at me. And occasionally letting out thunderous peals of laughter. I stared blankly at the ceiling, my already gloomy mood getting even worse. I silently nudged Jessie's shoulder, signaling her to pour me another drink. Before I could even take a sip, the tears started falling. He lied to me again. For God's sake, don't drink anymore. If you don't want your life, I still care about mine, you know. Jessie covered the top of my glass and moved it away, finally stopping her laughter and gently wiping my tears. Tell me, what are you thinking? Didn't you used to like him? Now that he's back, you're not willing? My head was spinning. Just thinking about Larry's face made me furious, and I instinctively retorted. Who said I liked him? I told you, I hate him. Right. You hate him, so you can't go 3 sentences without mentioning him, and you cry whenever his name comes up. You hate him, so when you heard he was in trouble, you rushed back to take him into your own home and took care of him diligently for over half a month. And you even played along with his little husband and wife role-playing game. Jessie laid out my actions one by one. I felt so ashamed, my face burning, wishing I could bury my head in the ground. But then she lifted my chin and delivered her summary. You're just in love with him. Jessie's eyes stared straight into mine. You waited for him for 6 years. Now that he's finally back, do you really want to be rivals for the rest of your lives? From what you've said, I don't believe he doesn't like you too. Since you both like each other, hurry up and clear out the misunderstandings. Life is only so long, how many more 6 years are you going to waste? She meant well, but I was so drunk that I only heard half of it before I passed out. My last memory was of Jessie taking my phone out of my pocket, making a call to someone, and then giving me a mysterious smile. I just felt like I was swaying violently, as if I were underwater, bobbing and drifting with no point of support. Until I heard a familiar voice, "We're home." I opened my eyes and found myself nestled in Larry's arms, swaying with the motion of his walking. The after effects of the alcohol made me forget that Larry had regained his memory. Instead, I remembered him calling me honey. Now, still groggy, I snuggled closer into his embrace and whispered, "My head hurts, and I have no strength. Hubby, you got back so late. Carry me inside." After saying that, I settled back into that comfortable spot and fell asleep again, completely oblivious to Larry's tense body. When I regained consciousness, my sense of smell was the first to awaken. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and waves of aroma wafted in from outside, tempting me to get up and investigate. Just then, Larry walked in carrying a small bowl. He was wearing my floral puppy apron, his bangs falling softly over his forehead. He looked so domestic and capable, total husband material. Awake? Drink some hangover soup first. I also made some porridge. Want to get up and have some? Even his voice was a plus. I rubbed my empty stomach and remembered what Jessie had said to me at the bar. I decided not to torture myself any longer. After a bowl of hot seafood porridge, the earlier feelings of sadness from being deceived were soothed. I tried my best to remain calm and talk to Larry. You remembered everything but kept acting. What exactly are you trying to do? What if I said I just wanted to be with you? What? Larry stood up, walked over to me, leaned down, and met my eyes. I said I just wanted to be with you. I came back because of you. I pretended I hadn't remembered because I didn't want to leave you. The sincerity in his eyes was almost overflowing. He spoke as he leaned closer and closer. I left before because I didn't want to drag you down, didn't want you to suffer with me. I went abroad because I knew if I stayed in the country, you would never give up looking for me. Finally, his kiss landed on my eyelid, as light as a feather. I'm sorry. Is there anything else you want to ask? The question I most wanted to ask was stuck in my throat. My voice was unusually hoarse. Do you? I like you. I've always liked you. No, that's not right. I love you. Very, very much. My head was splitting, and my whole body felt like it had been run over by a steamroller, sore and weak. I struggled to sit up and reached for the new clothes laid out at the foot of the bed. As I was putting them on, I inadvertently saw the conspicuous red marks on my body. That damn man. Once he got a taste, he was like an animal. I was muttering curses when his arms wrapped around my waist from behind. There were soft rustling sounds from the bed as Larry pressed against me, his slightly higher body temperature warming mine. Sleep a little longer. What time is it? Still sleeping? How come you're sleepier than me? Are you not up to it? The insult slipped out, earning me a sexy, low chuckle from the man. Want to try me again? Honey, how about you try me now and see if I'm up to it? Memories of last night flooded back instantly. Living room, balcony, bedroom, Larry had used the excuse of seeing if he was up to it to try them all out. What stuck with me most was how, before every time, he would press his nose against mine and whisper that line in a husky voice. It was giving me PTSD. I couldn't stop myself from kicking out, but the muscle in my thigh twinged, and the soreness made me cry out on the spot. I turned to look at the culprit's face. Larry's almond eyes blinked, his expression so innocent he looked more guileless than a newborn puppy. I gritted my teeth. You really are shameless. Thanks for the compliment, honey. Larry's sugary, cutesy voice was enough to make anyone faint from exasperation. Furious, I yanked his cheeks hard, satisfied only when I saw him grimace. Then I leaned in and hugged him. We had already wasted too much time in the past, there was no point dwelling on it. From now on, we would seize every day. Larry and I went to the hospital. Only after confirming that he had indeed fully recovered did I finally feel at ease. After we moved in together, his husband material traits became even more obvious. He did the cooking, he did the chores. Jessie said I was like an ancient emperor now, with food served to me and clothes laid out. Only I knew how much I was suffering. Larry, you move out. No. Then I'll move out. Larry held me down. That's even more out of the question. This is your house, you can't leave. This scene replayed itself almost every other day. I finally couldn't take it anymore. While Larry was working overtime, I secretly packed a few clothes and snuck over to Jessie's place to vent my frustrations. Larry was a beast in human clothing. During the day, he was a sweet, docile husband, always saying, "Honey, my heart aches for you." But at night, he'd start dragging me to try and see if he was up to it. As for the answer to that question, it was a bottomless pit. Up to it happened many times, not up to it happened even more. I feel like a tragic damsel in a romance drama, forced into countless acts of love. You can't just stand by and watch me suffer. I saw Jessie reach for my phone, about to call Larry again. I immediately slid to my knees in front of her, crying my eyes out, completely devoid of pride. Jessie looked at me with a complicated expression, silent for a long time before finally squeezing out, "I get it, stop showing off. Us single people really can't take this." Although she stubbornly believed I was showing off, she at least finally agreed to take in my broken self. Larry didn't know this address. I enjoyed a rare 2 days of peace, spending my time shopping and having afternoon tea with Jessie, feeling as carefree as a fairy. Just when I was blissfully forgetting my pain, Larry showed up at the door. That day, I was happily carrying newly bought pastries and cocktails, planning a tipsy evening with Jessie. I pushed open the door, and there was Larry, sitting on the living room sofa, smiling at me. I must have opened the door wrong. I silently backed out, closed the door, and pushed it open again. Larry hadn't disappeared. Instead, he stood up and was walking towards me. It had a bit of a horror movie vibe. I turned to run, but Larry closed the distance in 3 strides and locked me tightly in his embrace. Just then, Jessie came out of the kitchen, holding a bowl of freshly washed fruit. She glanced at me, then quickly turned her head, put the fruit on the coffee table, a fawning smile on her face. I immediately glared at her, communicating via brainwaves. How could you let him in? She shook her head miserably. I don't know. He just showed up. Get rid of him. Jessie closed her eyes. Can't save you. You're on your own. That night, after being trapped in Larry's arms and crying myself hoarse once again, he finally showed a shred of humanity and relented, saying he would give me more rest days in the future. With our intimate life harmonious, we didn't have any major conflicts. We spent our days eating, drinking, playing, kissing, and cuddling. We even found time to get our marriage certificate, becoming a legally married couple. The wedding wasn't a big affair, just a small gathering of close friends and family. That day, amidst a chorus of teasing, Larry drank a bit too much. He had his arm around me, showing me off to everyone, saying he had married the love of his life. My parents were the happiest. Larry and I were childhood sweethearts, and our families were old acquaintances. He was their ideal choice for a son-in-law. During the toasts, my dad clapped Larry on the shoulder and said earnestly, Larry, you have no idea how miserably Cherry cried the year you left. She's our only precious daughter. We're entrusting her to you now. You can't break her heart again." I immediately rushed over to cover his mouth, shaking my head frantically. "Dad, stop. I never cried, not once." A wave of good-natured laughter erupted around us, making my face turn beet red on the spot. I quickly hid in Larry's embrace. Married life wasn't much different from before. Larry and I still occasionally went out on dates. Until that day, when the food had just been served, I suddenly started dry heaving for no reason. Before I could even react, Larry, sitting across from me, his eyes lit up. Forget about eating, he rushed me straight to the hospital for a checkup. When I held the report in my hand, it still felt unreal. However, someone else was even more excited than I was. I looked up, and that sentimental fool Larry was crying again. With eyes full of tears and a thick nasal voice, even his hand resting on my lower abdomen was trembling slightly. "Honey, I'm really going to be a dad." Honestly, he looked pretty pitiful. To outsiders, we probably looked like a long-suffering couple who had been trying for a child for years and finally succeeded. I quickly pulled him up from the floor and wiped his tears. "Stop crying." Larry nuzzled my hand a couple of times, his voice full of joy. "Are you worried about me?" "No, it's just too embarrassing." "You don't love me." I cupped his face in my hands and gave him a loud kiss. "That's not true. I love you the most." Epilogue. Our world for two then became a family of 3. As my due date approached, it rained continuously for over half a month. Only on the day our little treasure was born was it coincidentally a bright sunny day. Larry, with a grand wave of his hand, said the baby would be named Sky, keeping it simple and casual. Our daughter was beautiful and adorable, as lovable as a little dumpling, passed around and cuddled by all the elders in the family. Larry, especially, doted on her fiercely. In the beginning, when he was a new dad, his baby-holding skills weren't quite proficient, and our daughter often scratched his face all over. Yet, he was the one who loved holding her the most, practically never wanting to let go all day. When Sky got a little older, she learned to watch TV. However, while other kids' TVs were filled with cartoons, our little treasure's channel perpetually played tearjerker soap operas. The female lead once again cried out in the pouring rain, "So this is love. It makes people suffer so much." Larry called it character building, saying it would let her experience the bitterness of love from a young age, so she wouldn't be snatched away by some bleach blonde punk when she grew up. At 3 years old, Sky was ready for kindergarten. On the way to school, Sky curiously looked around, her face beaming with a joyful smile. Her dad, on the other hand, was in the driver's seat, his eyes red again. I inadvertently glanced at this scene and couldn't help but ask in confusion, crying again? It would have been better if I hadn't asked. As soon as I did, those 2 lines of tears immediately fell. It startled Sky, who threw herself into his arms, comforting him while wiping his tears with her chubby little hands. Daddy, don't cry. She didn't quite understand adult emotions yet. The few comforting phrases she knew were learned from us. You're the bestest kid. Don't cry, your crown will fall. Wait, where did she learn that one? I shifted my gaze to Larry beside me. How many times have I told you, don't teach Sky random nonsense? Larry looked wronged too. I was just encouraging her. He's hopeless, such a lovable dork. But I still ruffled his hair and looked into his eyes seriously. It's okay. Even if you're a dork, I still like you. Larry didn't quite get it, staring at me blankly. Sky was already giggling and hugging me, explaining my words in her sweet, childish voice. Mommy means, she loves you very much.